is good? What is good, everyone? This is your friend David Wickstrom with Vibro and Foodservice Unfiltered. Thrilled for the podcast and my interview today. For those of you that have not tuned in before, this podcast is unscripted, conversational, finding out the why between what people actually do. So that's super exciting and super daunting at the same time, but why not go into the deep end right out of the gate? Before we get started, I know many of you that are going to NAFM next year. Contracts just came out on the 16th, which is crazy that we're planning for 2027. To Paraguay and Morocco, unbelievable wins against the Dutch and the Germans yesterday. World Cup fever is definitely here. And as we go into this weekend, to our friends in the UK, scoreboard, I know it's 250 years ago, but happy 4th of July to everyone. Although I will say that the UK did give us U2, Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Oasis, the Spice Girls, Blur. Oh, I could go on and on. But anyway, we're not here to talk about English rock bands. So today I am super excited about this guest, and I'm going to read this so I can actually say it right. I'm going to bring him on the stage and talk about him while we're doing this. So my first guest is Joe Carbonara, and he is a person that magnifies or is the persona of Chicago. He's wicked smart with an everyman vibe to him. Joe is kind, passionate, wise, and a connector of people. He has the pulse of the food service industry and never hesitates to lean in and give back to others. During his day job, Joe is the editor-in-chief for Food Service Equipment and Supply magazine. Joe, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, David. Thanks for having me. You talked about the birth of our nation this weekend, right? I think that was the official first national championship ever won.
So the U.S. won the first national championship.
Yeah, we won the first national championship.
So we can still rub it into the U.K.
Yeah,
like that's
I think so.
I love that.
I think so.
I love it. That's fantastic. So Joe, I want to start. I'm always interested, and I'm going to change it up just a little bit. I'd love to know. We know what you do right now. I'd love to know a little bit about your story that got you where you are today. Just here in the industry. You're obviously well known in the industry. I'd be interested to know your story that got you here.
The story that got me here. So I was, I'm not sure how far back to go, but I was the first in my family to go to college. Okay. And I thought at some point foolishly that I wanted to be a sports writer. And then I realized that I also like to eat and drink. And then it was going to take me a long while to be able to make anything at that. So I started working for newspapers, local newspapers, and then trade magazines. And then I ended up at a company called Smith Buckland, which is an association management company. And for anybody that's familiar with NAFM, that's where NAFM and MAFSI got their starts. Smith Buckland still helps NAFM run the trade show and that sort of thing. So there's still a very strong relationship between those two companies. I spent 11 years at Smith Buckland. The last 6 of those years, and I worked with multiple trade associations, like really, really interesting things, groups like the International Oracle Users Group for people that are database administrators for Oracle products. The Monument Builders of North America, those are the people who build the headstones that go above your grave. Battery Council International, battery manufacturers. And NAFM. NAFM was by far the most interesting. They were all interesting and fun in their own way. But I would say that NAFM by far was the most interesting one and the most relatable one because we all love to eat. And being a Chicagoan, I'm a guy with an aspiring cholesterol problem. So, eating, I think, was, part of the DNA there for a while. So I was getting ready. I was about to get married, and I was working Deidre Flynn, who was NAFM's executive director at the time, and someone who I worked very closely for 11 years. She called me and she said, "Look, Maureen Slocum's going to call you, and you just listen to what she has to say." And that phone call came, and the day I was supposed to meet Maureen, I'd heard that the previous editor of the magazine of FENS had left the position. And I was like, oh, they want to know who I might know who would be a good fit to be editor of the magazine. So Maureen and I met for lunch, and we got about 5 or 10 minutes into our conversation, and I'm thinking, oh no, we're not talking about who I know. We're talking about whether I would be a good fit for the editor of the magazine. So never mind like this collection of phone numbers and email addresses I have in my pocket. We're going to talk about me. I was going to go. I was going on. I was getting married in less than 2 weeks. So to wife 1.0. So we were going off to get married, and she's still wife 1.0. So that's a good thing, Patty. And we were going off to get married, and I said to Maureen, I'm like, well, I said, if you still, if you, I'm into this. If you still want to talk when I get back, happy to do it. Here's when I get back. But if you have to move on, I understand it's not personal, it's business. 2 days after I got back from my honeymoon, she called, and I've been doing this for over 20 years since.
Wow, Joe, I love that. And shout out to Deidre and Maureen, two of my favorite human beings on the entire planet. They're just salt of the earth.
Yeah, wonderful people for sure. Both have played an important role in my career to where I got today.
I love it. Well, hey, topic just came up. Apparently, somebody just commented. I can't see who it is, but they said you married up. So you outkicked your coverage when you got married.
No question about that. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't realize that.
I love it. I love it. Well, and Joe, I had a question too. Just I see on the circuit all the time. In your role at the magazine, what other segments do you support? I know we're together involved through AHF. Are there other associations or your team that is part of that?
Yeah, the magazine itself is close to 80 years old. We have 27,000 subscribers, and it's kind of starting with a wide funnel to kind of get you to where to get you to what we talk about a little bit, or my role in that. In terms of operators, our operators are what we would classify as multi-unit operators. Yes, chain restaurants, but also multi-concept restaurants, like a company that might open only one or two of a concept, but they'll open 10 different concepts or something along those lines. AHF, healthcare food service, right, where there are multiple points of service on a campus, college and university food service, corporate dining, K through 12, all those fun folks, and the most selective of all the closed campus dining options, corrections, they are also part of our readership as well. And then we have readers that are also part of the supply chain too. So consultants, dealers, service agents, manufacturers, reps, and the whole bit. And our sweet spot in the magazine is we think about those Venn diagrams when you were in school, right? Where everybody kind of overlaps, or I can just do that, overlaps, where they kind of overlap. And our real sweet spot is kind of where all those groups kind of cross. So for us, that's where we see the sweet spot is. So I get the opportunity to work with AHF. Some of my team works with SHFM. Occasionally, we work in the college segment. We get to work with a little bit of everybody. Is kind of how I like to think of it.
I'd love seeing your team, from Sam to Renee, to really everybody. It's always a joy when we get to see your team. And I always look forward to the magazine when I like the hard copy, Joe. I like to read it, sit down and actually read it and see what's happening. It's super cool.
Yeah, thank you. We still think, there's still, I'm still a hard copy reader of not just publications, but of books as well. I think that, screen, like, this is awesome. Look at us. We're talking right now and we're doing this via screen, and that's awesome. And then when we get done, we're going to go back to our day jobs, right? And do what it is that we do. And it's going to be pretty screen centric. So it's nice to be able to break that cycle a little bit and actually read a physical book or a magazine or something like that. So we hear it a lot of times, like from people that they still like reading the hard copy. And there's something about the serendipity of not knowing what's in there when you turn it. Oh, look at that! I didn't, So we try to be a little surprising, and we try not to do that just in the form of typos.
And Joe, that's a little metaphor for life. It's the Buddha. Like if you're present, like life will unfold instead of anticipating. That was my Buddha moment for this afternoon for you, Joe. Namaste. Namaste. Joe, I'm really interested too. I've seen you speak publicly and involved. And my question is this: is that something that you were always good at? And by the way, everyone, Joe's really good at it. He can hold court. Is that something you're good at, or something that you maybe were mortified and worked your way to be good at throughout the years? Like, how did you land there to be that person?
Well, you're very kind to say that, and I'm always very humbled to have the opportunity to do it. I'm not sure that I ever want to watch myself do it because I wonder how cringy that would really be. I think it's a couple things. The reason, I guess it comes back in part to the reason that I do it. When we call people for the magazine or for events or different things that we're doing, we ask them to take time from their day to help us serve our readers, right? So when someone calls and says you can do this, I think it's only right to give back. It's a way for me to be able to give back and to share some of the things that I learned. One of the things that we've come to realize over the years is that what makes you very good in your job, David, is focus, right? Being able to understanding your customers, understanding your product, understanding what the recipe success for your company. That's what it is. And everyone is kind of that way. My job is to kind of elevate that conversation, get you to look over the fence into other people's gardens once in a while and see what's going on there. And I think when I become more comfortable public speaking, with people see value in what I do. So that gives me confidence, but B, just being around the industry for so long. I've been connected with the food service industry now for over 26 years. Yeah. So I feel comfortable enough in my knowledge base, just enough to know that I could really screw things up pretty bad if I wasn't paying attention. But I know that people trust me, they value it, and we can have good conversations back and forth, kind of like you and I are having right now. But I think that's one of the things that motivates me to be a good public speaker, or to be a public speaker. Just a chance to kind of have an impact, to kind of give back to people who have helped us with the magazine and try and make the community a little bit better space. Because if we do that, then it sounds awfully cliche, but if we do that, then we all benefit.
And I'm gonna give you another cliche, like Joe. You're leaning in and you're being a servant leader. Like hearing you, you're not doing it for this is Joe's brand or the magazine's brand. It's how can I give back to the food service industry, and then tenfold it comes right back to you.
You're exactly right. I mean, it's that whole saying, there's a reason cliches exist. There are ribbons of truth that are in them, right? So what you give, you get back, and particularly if you're doing it for the right reasons, which I hope I am. I think that I feel that way, but I don't ever want to get too comfortable where that's not truly the case, where I'm too cocky or arrogant about it. Meaning I want to do it for the right reasons. And it's an opportunity. The other thing I think that's really cool for me, it's just an opportunity to learn. So if I'm learning and I'm able to share things that I'm learning with our readers or with advertisers, sometimes advertisers have me come and talk to customer events or whatever the opportunity may be, it's always a chance for me to learn a little bit.
That's amazing. Could you describe that as your writing as well? Because I also know you write for the magazine, obviously. Is that the same? Do you approach that the same, or do you approach it differently?
Yeah, I try to approach it in a similar way for sure. And I try to think, the way society is today, we are inundated with so much information, so rapid fire. We've all been at conferences lately. We've heard they say, the amount of information people are processing today, so much more than anyone was processing 20, 30, 40. Pick how far back you went. We're still processing a lot more each day. So what I want to be able to do is it kind of comes down to being able to answer one question. If I said, hey, David, I really want you to read this article, the question you're asking yourself, and it maybe not be these exact words, but you're asking, okay, Joe, but what's in it for me? Why do I care?
Yeah.
I try to show why they care and what they can learn or why create some context and some importance for them. I think that's the biggest thing I try to do. My writing style tends to be a little bit more repertorial, reporter-like, in nature. I'm very straight to it. When I speak, there's a lot more personality that comes in part because when I speak, I can see you nodding and agreeing and laughing at some of my jokes and not at others, and that's okay. That's good, right? When you're in person with someone or doing something like this, you kind of get better feelings on boundaries in terms of where you can go and how far you can kind of push things. I always like to tell people, if you don't, when we do panels, I do a lot of panels, and Jack Scott from Alto Sham used to call me the moderator, right? Because I would moderate just about everything. and Jack would, but my point was with everybody when we do panels is like, look, if we don't get through all the questions, nobody cares, so long as it's a good give and take and people learn something from it.
Yeah, it's like how people walk away, how they felt about the moment, and like how they, ultimately that's true.
Yeah, I mean, and you're like, I've seen you speak, like you're sharp. Like, how did you get to that point?
I go back to my father that told me at a young age, and essentially he said, I've said this before, and it doesn't land well because he's a baby boomer, but this is what my dad said to me when I was like 8. He goes, "You always ask the best looking girl to dance," which is coming from like an 80-year-old man. So like it doesn't hit well now, but like that message to me was go for it. Go into the deep end, even if you're scared about it. And early on, he taught me that. And I lean into being uncomfortable. Public speaking's not easy, and it's super enjoyable too. So, like, especially right now, we're live, Joe. So anything can happen, and I think it's super exciting. So it's, I guess, touching on more of like what you said. It's about always wanting to learn and push myself and get out of my comfort zone too. So and just keep doing it.
Well, and when that's central, and that's who you are when you're not speaking, right? Known you for a while now, that is the person you are when you're not speaking. So when you're able to be the person you are on stage, like your truer self on stage, you know what I mean? Like these things that you value in life and these things that shape your day to day, right? When you're able to bring that on stage with you, that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks. And I think this is love fest, but I've seen you off stage and you're the same guy too, as well. And I think that's so key is if somebody were a great speaker, but they're a total jerk off the stage, it's like, wait, those two don't connect. Like the message doesn't hit. You don't get people to come along with you on the ride, but you and I are the same two people when we're talking on a panel or you and I having a beer talking about, combi ovens. It's the same.
Well, and it's just easier that way, isn't it? I mean, trying to figure out who you need to be for this person or that, it just doesn't make sense. I'm reminded of years ago, I had the chance to interview the late Tom Schrack Sr., who was the owner of Hockenberg's, a dealer down in Nebraska. And we were talking a lot about integrity, and just always being honest. And he's like, he goes, just don't ever tell a lie. Just always be honest about who you are and what you're doing. Because that way you don't have to remember what you told somebody. He goes, it's not always easy, but in the long run, it's just better for you and better for everyone involved. And it shows who you are. And that's just one of those lessons that I've learned from people over the years. And talking to people, that's one of the things that kind of can keep you engaged in this industry. Once in a while, you can find someone that has a few interesting tidbits.
Yes.
That really, when you're working on a story, that can carry over into other parts of your life, which I think is pretty cool.
And I am going to give love to the Midwest. I think because we're both, and I'll just talk about you, Joe, because you're from Chicagoland area, you're from the Midwest. There's a certain folksy, homespun, it's just an attitude I would say we have in the Midwest. It's like farmers. You get up, you work, you do your best. It's all that.
Yeah. Those of us here in flyover country.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, that work ethic, that homespun, like it's, my father was a butcher. He wanted to make sure that my brother and sister and I never worked in that. Although he used to take me there he worked for an independent grocer on the west side of Chicago, and he would take me there to work with him. And I kind of liked it. And I don't know if I was good at it, but I thought I was anyway. And we would go, and one day as I was getting close to being a senior in high school, he's like, well, where are you going to go to college? I'm like, well, what if I just went and did what you do? We had a nice house, we had a pretty nice life. And he was irate. And he's like, no, I do this so you don't have to. He goes, you're going to get it. You're going to go to college. You're going to get a job, and you're going to do something with your life. He was adamant about it. So that was kind of eye-opening. But I did get a bit of a work ethic from him, as well as from my mom. But my dad worked 6 days a week, and seeing that and going in there and seeing how hard some of that work is. He did me a huge favor by making sure I stayed in getting a degree. I think I would have broken down by now if I was doing what he had done.
Right. Well, Joe, would you say then that, like, even that attention to detail? I imagine if he's a butcher, you can't mess up a prime cut of beef. Like, you have to be really smart the way you're cutting that for your guests. And like, would that early influence have influenced you later in life?
How about safety too? Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a safety thing. So the thing that was interesting, like my dad worked as an independent grocery store on the west side of Chicago, and it was a pretty poor neighborhood, when he was there, and that sort of thing. So his focus was not so much on, like, although we ate very well as a family, don't get me wrong, but his focus was on helping. His store specialized in helping people who maybe didn't have a lot of money. So back then, like, if he were alive today, he wouldn't know what the heck happened with chicken wings and, being so expensive and that sort of thing. Chicken wings, that was a low cost option he could sell families. Like, here's a 10-pound bag of chicken wings for, less than $10, and you could eat off of that for a bit. They could do things with it. So I think one of the things that my dad taught me was, show up early, right? He was always the first guy there that opened up the store every morning, even though it wasn't his business. He opened up the store, brought the bread in, did things. He showed me, how to work with vendors, try to treat people fairly. And if, make sure that they treat you fairly, you need to stand up for yourself. And he was pretty instrumental in trying to teach some kids from the neighborhood where he worked how to get careers for themselves as well, mentoring some of them and that sort of thing. It worked out okay in some cases and not okay in others. That's how that goes sometimes. But just, I don't know, show up every day, thoughtful, hard work, put your head down, do the best you can for the business, and for the people that you're serving. And I think that's kind of carries over into my approach.
I love that, Joe, too, that he's also thinking about the community and feeding people. Like, we know, like, there's still food deserts here in the U.S. And I mean, talk about community. When ultimately, if you can feed somebody or share a meal with somebody, that's one of the most intimate human experiences you can have. As far as, yeah,
you're exactly right, David. You're exactly, you're exactly right. It's one of the most important and most intimate things you can do is feeding someone. If you can teach, like, there was a young man who worked for my dad, and he was about my age, and my dad taught him a job, and this guy was going to have the opportunity to be able to feed his family. I mean, he wasn't going to be rich or anything like that, but he'd have a solid middle-class job for as long as he wanted one. And when this guy went off, fell in with the wrong crowd and that sort of thing, it really kind of, I don't know, it kind of spun my dad a little bit, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think just that thing that's showing up. I think the other thing that I learned from him is to be generous when you can. There were people there that sometimes didn't have certain things, like they might have had kids but couldn't afford clothes or different things, and my dad would have my mom sometimes pull things that my brother and I couldn't wear anymore, and he'd bring them to work, he'd give them to so-and-so because he needs it, as well. Or my dad, now the funny thing, my dad was afraid of heights. And we had a house, and it wasn't a big house, but it was like a 2-story split level house in Darien, Illinois. My dad didn't want to get up and paint. He was afraid of going on the ladder to paint the gutters. So he would pay, it was a big deal for him to be able to do this, but to be able to pay one of his guys who needed a few extra bucks, come home, we'll feed you dinner, you sleep on the couch. I'll paint the lower ones, you'll paint the upper ones on the weekend, is what, my dad would do for these guys. So yeah, be a little bit generous when you can.
It's amazing, Joe, and you create stories, and again, a community. It's such a. I love that story, which I think it brings me even into my next question for you, which I think you're kind of touching on it too. Do you have a certain leadership style that you attest to, or even take a step back to any mentors along the way that kind of got you towards that leadership style? It's kind of a twofold question there.
Yeah, I think, in terms of leadership style, probably a lot of what I described about my dad, show up, put your head down, work hard, just do the best you can that day and come back tomorrow and try and do it again. Help people when they ask for your help and they need it, and that sort of thing. I think that I try to take the big picture, into account always. Some days it's easier or better than others, right? We're only human, and that sort of thing. There's a bunch of people in the world out there who have influenced me. I talked about Deidre and Maureen, but my father here a little bit. One of the first editors I had, or trade editors, was a guy named Wayne Syatt, and I worked in the glorious world of office products. I was writing for a magazine called Office Products Dealer. I had this history of working for magazines that have very clever names: Foodservice, Equipment, and Supplies. I wonder what it's about. Office Products Dealer. I wonder what it's about. Right. So I was writing about fax machines and recycled paper and ballpoint pens back in the early '90s, when it was really, really stylish. But Wayne was, I was kind of a smart ass kid going out, if I could, and that sort of thing. But he took me under his wing and showed me quite a bit. And I learned quite a bit, and that got me ready to take that next step at Smith Buckland. But Wayne was someone for so many years that I remained in touch with. We've kind of unfortunately fallen out of touch a little bit. But he was someone that was a true mentor to me. And when I had questions professionally and that sort of thing, I would go to him. There were a lot of people at Smith Buckland that I worked with over the years that I learned all sorts of different things from. And I think I carry a little bit of them, every day. Few of them taught me, don't be afraid to edit something hard. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and really also got me to think about how what you're doing, I worked in the Marcom department, but how what I was doing might impact someone that was in exhibit sales or membership, or, I learned that matrix environment and how we all kind of work together. So I think that's a part of it.
Joe, would you say that if somebody junior that's just starting their career in our industry, they came to you and said, what advice would you give me? Or what are 3 things you need to do to be a success? And I think you might have even touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, to be a success in the food service industry. I think number one, be a sponge. Like, go to as much as you can, listen to as much as you can, take notes, ask questions. I think just be really, really active. I learned early in my career as editor of this magazine. I remember being at a FIDA conference, and I was sitting, and it was toward the end of the day, it's like 3:00. I think we'd been in sessions for 6 hours or something like that. And there was about a third of the people that had started in the room. Everybody else was either on the golf course or at the bar, or treating the golf course like a bar, as they do at some of those conferences. And while we were there, I could see the other dealers that were in the room looking at me, and they're kind of nodding. And I felt like I was kind of earning their respect, because we were in it together. We were in listening to each other. We were showing some commitment. And a few of them didn't know who I was at the time, so they just kind of started talking to me on the way out and that sort of thing. So I think and some of those relationships have, withstood the test of time. So I think showing up, being present, learning, asking questions, working the room as much as you're comfortable, just looking forward, I think, to those opportunities. Pick your mentors. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of mistakes. Mistakes are learning opportunities. I've learned a lot from mistakes over the years. You asked, I want to go back to one other thing, though.
Yeah, of course.
If I may. You asked about one other person that would, other people that have had an impact on me. For 20 years, I had the privilege of coaching, being an assistant basketball coach here in Chicago for De La Salle Institute, which is a school on the south side of Chicago. And I had the opportunity to work with Tom White, who's the head coach and the athletic director, and John Brogan, who's one of my closest friends since college. And what those two guys taught me was not only bigger picture, but they taught me the importance of preparation, and really looking ahead and being prepared, and don't necessarily rest because you got this done. Whether we were going to scout a basketball game, or whether we were getting ready to opponent, or maybe we were just helping a kid through something. They taught me to look at things holistically, and that there was absolutely no substitution for being prepared. That could be getting ready for a game. That could be getting ready for a practice. That could be getting ready for the team dinner at the end of the year. Anything that we did to support the school, the athletes, their families, or even represent the school, like being prepared really, really helps.
And that preparation, because things happen, they always do. You've already put in the groundwork, so you have a strong base. That's what I'm hearing you say, Joe. That you
Well,
did.
and it gives you confidence. So Joe Madden, who was the greatest manager in baseball history because he got the
Amen.
Chicago Cubs to the World Series and they won it in 2016. His thing is preparation knows no fear. Preparation doesn't know anxiety. Preparation doesn't feel any emotion. Preparation is preparation. So be prepared. Prepare the same way. Feel confident in your preparations. Adjust when you need to, but be ready. And that's one of those things that I remember reading that in a book. Some of his comments about preparation, and that really stuck with me. So whether I'm writing a story or doing a talk, or like when we got ready to talk today, like you sent me a handful of questions just to get my juices going. I think you have some surprises though planned for me, but
I do.
So we went and I listened, and I took that into account. But that makes me comfortable and ready to go.
I love it. Well, it's a perfect segue. I have to ask, where were you November 2nd, 2016, when our beloved Northsiders won the World Series?
Sitting in my easy chair in my living room, trying not to throw up. It was the wildest thing. Like I wasn't that nervous the day I got married. I wasn't that nervous the day any of my children were born.
Yep.
And I was plenty nervous for some of those things. But like when all that happened, like that day, and I knew, I went to Game 5 thinking that, that year I went to a lot of Cubs games, right? We share some season tickets. And I remember the very first game of the playoffs, walking down to Wrigley Field, and it felt like a coronation. Like it was a party on Addison, walking the whole way down. Everyone was buzzing, and I lived like a mile from there. I remember when the Cubs when they won the pennant, watching it at a friend's house, and that feeling. Then I remember when they came home, tied 1-1 in the World Series with Cleveland, and my wife and I, Patty and I, took a walk. We didn't have tickets for the first game back. We just walked around Wrigley Field, and it was like being in like a movie, like space, the atmosphere wasn't. It was like the most joyous thing I think I'd ever been around. Everyone was just happy to be there. And the streets were jammed with people. There's no way the ballpark could hold the number of us that were walking through the streets that day. People were running TVs out of third floor apartments with cables into the middle of the sidewalk. There were kegs. There were old people, young people. It was nuts, right? And then they lost the next two games. And then I went to Game 5 thinking, okay, well, at least I get one more ball game in, and they go, and then they won Game 5, and it was wild, like the craziest thing. And if you know anything about like Chicago's recent history, this story will really click with you. I came out of the game with my buddy, and Harry Carey, the legendary Cubs announcer, had made the comment once: "As sure as God made little green apples, one day the Cubs will win the World Series." Well, if you went out, there was a statue of Harry Carey behind the center field bleachers, covered in green apples. It was wild. And then there were Chicago police standing shoulder to shoulder, from Waveland, from Sheffield to Clark. And people were hugging the police, thanking them thank you for protecting us, and that sort of thing. Conversation that seems almost unconscionable today. But yeah, then that day, the day that they won it though, I was so nervous. My friend was like, come on, we're going to go to a bar and watch. And I was like, okay, you got to pick. We just walked around. Lines were blocks to get into places. So we ordered a pizza and sat on the couch, and I sat like this for a long time.
I've never been so grateful for a rain delay, because when Chapman gave up that home run to tie it and Ramirez tied it up, I'm like, oh my God, here we go again.
Yeah.
And I've heard stories post just recently of what Jason Hayward said, his speech during that rain delay, which pretty much said, this is your moment, fellas. And
yeah. I mean, he was the best paid motivational speaker in the US, I think, that year.
It was worth the $117 million to bat 210. I don't care. Got us a W. I laughed, Joe. My son at that time was 3, and he's sleeping in his room, and we're watching the game upstairs, and I can't wake him up because he had an ear infection. So I'm like running outside. It was like midnight when we played.
It was late.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was late. We were sitting there. Patty went and woke up the girls and brought it on. Like, well, why? And she's like, wait, why is Dad crying? No reason.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I have to tell a quick story around the Cubs. During their playoff run, my wife, I got irritated. She got behind home plate against the Giants, and I'm like, she kind of knows baseball, but not that much. And I was irritated because I'm like you, a diehard Cub fan. So I was a little jerky about it. I'm owning that. So game 6 and the National League champion against the Dodgers, she goes, I have something for you. And I'm like, great. She slides a ticket to the bleachers when they clinch. She said, the only thing is you got to go by yourself. Are you okay with that? I'm like, see ya. I was already hitting for the train. And when they clinched, Joe, it was the funniest thing. There were 2 massive Italian men, probably 6'4", 240. I mean, they're just linemen. When we won, it was like a scene from Dirty Dancing. I jumped into their arms and they both lifted me up. And all I saw, I was in the bleachers, is just beer flying everywhere. And such a magical moment.
It's so fun. And that's one of the great things I think about sports in that respect, is that it can bring people together. It can create some community around it, which is fun. Like, we have fun stories that we can share. And I'm sure that the people who are watching this probably have their own fun sports stories that they can,
Yep.
That they're able to share. And that's a beautiful thing. It helps us establish some common ground so we can find even more.
That's probably the key to life, Joe. It's not what makes us different, and what connects us. Because in 16, it didn't matter who you loved, who you voted for, who you prayed to. It's like, do you support the 9 that are out there on the field?
It was we had a friend of mine was in from Washington D.C. He was a big Cub fan, and they were trying to figure out where to watch one of the World Series games, and the bars were all packed, and he knew where we lived. He goes, "Hey, can I bring my brother, my stepbrothers over?" Sure. Then my wife's nephew Tommy was going. They were going They were trying to find a place to go. They'd had a few. And they're like, "Hey, Uncle Joe, can we don't know where to go to watch a game. Can we come over?" So I went from thinking it was just going to be me with a bag of Doritos watching like game 4, I think it was, or something like that, to a house full. So, and it was awesome. And like people who you would never imagine having together. So yeah, I think it was still, even though it stunk that they lost, it was still a fun night to be together.
Yeah. It's those memories, those anchor points for sure. Which I think it's even a good transition too. It's like you do this for a living, Joe. What are you most like? And this could be personally or professionally. What are you most excited about these days? Whether trends in the industry or personally in the family, you name it.
Well, personally in the family, I'm excited. Right now I have 3 daughters, and my middle daughter just graduated from high school, so she's heading off to Marquette in the fall. She's in there some science, physiological, or how about this? She's in a program that I cannot even try to pronounce or spell, so that tells you that my daughter must be fairly smart.
Yep.
So but she wants to be a physical therapist. This is all her. I'm thrilled that she's going to Marquette. I think it's a great school. It's close enough to home, but close enough where she can be away. But it's just a really good school, and I'm excited for that for her. This was all her choice, and I think this was really, really awesome. So I think we're excited about that. My youngest is getting ready. She'll be a senior in high school. We're going to start the next part of the college thing with her, and that's really exciting. So those are some things I think in our family that are kind of exciting to happen. And we're seeing a lot of other family members getting ready to get married, like nieces. My children's first cousins are of age where they can start getting married. So some cool family things that I think are coming down the pipe, for sure. I think from an industry, there's a couple of trends that I think the trend that's most interesting to me is looking at beverages right now. I think beverages are booming, and I think it's going to be that way for another couple of years. And why is that? I think it's that way for a couple of different reasons. Number one, our economy is still a little wonky. Yep. Where maybe even if the underlying foundations, people will tell you that some of the underlying parts of it are still solid enough. The reality is that the average consumer doesn't always feel that way. If you're in the top line of the K economy, you probably have a better thought process outlook about how things are going. If you're in the bottom line, you don't feel it. But the one thing we can all agree on is that on a really hot day, like it's going to be today, is a beverage is a good thing, right? And we can indulge with, we do from Data Central referred to as little treat culture, where we can get ourselves a really cool beverage, or maybe even a small sundae or a dessert or something like that, where we can indulge and kind of break the cycle of our normal routine, and it's really cool, and we love it. So it doesn't really require a cosigner to help us. So I think that's a really cool thing. So I think that's probably one of the things from an industry perspective that I'm really excited about, because it's unlocking more and more creativity. Drinks are coming out faster than I can figure out what they are. I still haven't figured out what matcha is yet. So, but that's having a moment.
Joe, I have no idea what it is.
Me neither. Right? Yeah. I thought cold foam was when the hot water heater went out. I used to let shampoo in my hair. I thought that was cold foam, but that's not cold foam.
Old style on the bleachers, yeah.
Right. So it's really, really having that sort of thing. Yeah, it's having a moment.
I think earlier this year I went to IFMA's show, and I brilliant, kudos to them. They had a Gen Z panel talking about their habits, why they buy, what they look for, et cetera. And I think you may even be touching on that, like as far as trends.
Yeah. They're going to shape what's next, and we have to pay attention as an industry. We have to pay attention to that. I have to report on it. You and your company have to be able to react to it. You guys are in a good spot. I'm not saying this just because this is a Vibro podcast, but the reality is that I remember 25 years ago when I first met my wife and some of her friends. We would get together and watch the Bears game or something on Sunday, and there was this one guy who showed up all the time with his water bottle, and we would make fun of him because they're like, "What, did you have to walk through the desert to get to us?" He was coming like 4 blocks or something like that, right? Now, everybody because nobody brought a water bottle anywhere then. Now everybody brings a water bottle everywhere, and it's sustainable, it's healthy, it's all that sort of stuff. And I think you guys are really, really well positioned, and it's been great to see. Operators getting on board. We had an event for one of our publications, and I texted you a picture that I saw of one of your water. Yeah. And again, I'm not saying this is just natural part of our beverage conversation. It's very center of the plate, but there were a couple of Vibro dispensers and the whole bit, and very on trend. It looked great within the space, and it's really cool to see. There are other examples of that, of different types of cooking equipment or other things like that we could talk about. Beverage dispensers, where you're talking about beer and cocktails, and just the way it's all being integrated but to support this moment with beverages. I just think it's cool.
And you bring up a great point. I'm smiling because I know it wasn't a Vibro commercial, and it's like when you see something that's cool, whether it's like Perlick or Rationale or you name, if they're doing something cool, you just talk about it and you share it. Like, this is helping the industry. I always believe there's enough room, even our competitors, there's enough room in the pool for all of us to do something cool.
Yeah, correct. And I know that everyone talks about being sustainable and good to the environment and that sort of thing. But when I see that they're using refillable water bottles, for example, we were staying in a hotel earlier this year for one of our events, and there were refillable water bottles, and we left for the night, and they came back and reset the room for us. And then these bottles were all refilled. So that's great. We're not throwing plastic into the, we're not throwing plastic into the landfill or anything like that. I mean, I'll still have a plastic water bottle from time to time. Yeah. But I have my, with my daughter's softball stuff, like I have my, one of the other vendors gave me a Yeti water bottle that goes every game with me.
I love it, Joe. I love it. Well, I'm going to start with this. Do you have, and I'm looking at all my notes. I'm going to pivot here. Do you have any questions for me? And I said, I think I should be worried about this.
Okay, so let's wind back the clock here for a minute.
Yep.
What did 15-year-old David think he'd be doing at this stage in his life?
Yeah, gosh, great question. So it's 2 things. I was going to be starting catcher for the Chicago Cubs, which, like, I played into high school, and that's where it stopped. that's the same age my mother went back to school to get her master's in social work. And I mean, even before that, like that psychology or social work or sociology always just made sense to me. So I actually at 15, wanted to be a psychotherapist. And I also wanted to be a world famous actor too. So I wanted to be a social worker, psychotherapist, and an actor. I did plays and musicals in high school. So at 15 years old, that was my roadmap. And then the part-time, I'd be a starting catcher for the Cubs.
Well, it's hard to catch every day, right? We know that catchers wear down. That's why you need at least two. Most teams carry three. So
I could go to Steppenwolf, between starts, and then I could talk to people about their feelings in between.
Well, you can take the red line from Wrigley right down to or the Goodman. You'd have to take it to the Goodman because otherwise you have to transfer to the Brown line to get to the Steppenwolf.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. But I think it was always, at 15, it was always connected to people. That was always of interest, whether it was touching people through like acting or through social work and connecting with them that way. That always, from an early age, always appealed to me.
We talked a little bit about what motivates me to do more, to be active in the industry. Like, I'm serving this year as conference co-chair for the AHF National Conference right in Atlanta. You are, and if you're a healthcare food service professional, selfless plug, register for the conference. We'd love to see you down there in Atlanta. I can attest that the air conditioning in the hotel works brilliantly. But what keeps you so involved in these industry boards and in this? I mean, we see each other in a lot of these same places. What's your motivation for doing that?
I think it was heightened more, and I've talked about it when I got sick last year. Like I was always hardwired that, Joe, but I'm going to use like the last year where when I was sick, everything else, nothing else really matters. Your health is first. There you go. You're wearing the button. I love it. Christine Guillot is going to be laughing. She's going to be laughing. I make her wear the button when she sees me. But I love that, Joe. That makes my heart sing. It was knowing that all the other stuff is fleeting, just stuff, awards, FOMO, like that's all fleeting. So for me, getting involved is coming out on the other side is like being present and helping the community. I love this community. I love food service community. So this is my way to get back and be super intentional, super present as best I can all the time. Because I know it's coming back tenfold. That's the stuff that feeds me. That's what I gain. I absolutely love that.
That's good.
Yeah.
What I'm going to ask you about business now. Well, a little more specifically on business now. Like what? Thinking about the last couple of years, right? The last 3 to 5 years have been interesting times professionally and personally for that matter. How is what your customers are asking of you? How has that evolved? Are they asking you for more data, more stuff on ROI? Or maybe nothing's changed, but I'm guessing that given the world that we live in, they're asking for different things.
Yeah, ROI is there. What I'm finding really in the last couple of years, Joe, is experiential is really elevated. And that could be related to Gen Z where there's people will pay money for experience. And that's where, when I'm landing with Vibro, it's elevated water. We understand that. So that's where we land of creating that experience for people. And it's really nuanced. I don't believe people are like dazzled by big marketing ploys of do nothing against Mountain Dew, love you Pepsi, but like that kind of like in your face, guerrilla marketing, which is fine in certain situations, but people are looking for experience. So I've really found that we've stayed consistent on our message, who we are, where we land, and we really don't waver as far as elevated amenities. We want to be partners to help you experience that, and water can be an experience. That's how I see it, Joe.
Well, absolutely, water can be a part of the experience. I just talked about how it was a part of my experience, both at a restaurant, and in a hotel. And I think you're exactly right. At the end of the day, people still buy from people. The technology that we're using, whether it's some fun and exciting form of AI, things like auto quotes or Revit or whatever it is that we're using to do our jobs a little bit better, at the end of the day, we're still buying from people. We still want to know. We still want to know that there's somebody behind that product that's going to stand behind that product and be there for us when we need them. Full stop. I mean, that's the deal, right? I mean, so I think that those relationships and those experiences, use that technology. My advice would be to use technology. Don't run from it. Use it to help you enhance your relationships. Don't let it make your relationships transactional. Let it make the transactions really transactional. But you spend more time solving problems, getting to know what makes them tick, and uncovering ways that you can continue to add value.
Amen. It's apropos. Our friend Scott Rotano's on here, which the three of us were texting, and he's a perfect example of relationship first driven experience. Does amazing work out of the Indianapolis market throughout the U.S.
Sure.
And, I mean, yeah, like I think of Shane Varnum at ITW and Rob Guile at Ollie Group. Like you can go down the line, Matt Rigney. People buy from people. The face Shelley at Ecolab. Like.
Yeah, well, and you look at why people don't buy. Like when I've had more conversations lately with consultants or people who are speccing product, in the markets, and I'm like, well, how do you know when you have the right one? And part of the conversation is who the local representation is, right? Who are the reps? Who are the dealers that are selling it to me? And then service and parts availability, because there's really only two types of equipment that is broken down and that is yet to break down. And that's not a knock on anybody's equipment. It always breaks. Cars break, we break, things break. It's not about that. It happens. It's okay. What's important is how can you fix it? How expedient can you be with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Not to make it about me, but to totally make it about me. Like it was a reminder when I was going through treatment. I'm like, gosh, am I leaving a positive mark? Or I'm not questioning my self-worth because I know I'm worthy, and during AHF, I see that button, everyone is wearing that button. And that's a reminder back to if you show up and you're kind to people, this is what happens when you need something. And so,
well, and what's the most basic need that we have as human beings? We want to know that if we, that if we're not there tomorrow, that someone will notice, that we made enough of a difference that someone will say, where's David? Where's Joe?
Yep.
I don't think people are going to ask that about Scott Rotano, but maybe they will. Who knows? They'll say, wait, where's Scott Rotano?
They're saying, why is he here?
Who let him in again? Why? I think it's a basic human need. That way, that what you've done has meant a little something.
Yeah. That circles back to for me personally, and I know with you, Joe, I'm that much more hyper focused on you just lean in because you never know anyone's story when you're seeing them face to face. So
yeah,
give them grace, give them kindness, listen to them, be present.
Yeah, you don't. Boy, there have been a few family examples where things have come up over the past conversations I didn't think I'd be having, things that came up, with family. On the surface, you wouldn't know anything was wrong, but something was happening. So yeah, I really learned that importance of not judging the book by its cover.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Joe, this is an exciting time. This is the time that you should be worried because this is the part in the podcast where we have 7 questions. And if you get all of the 7 questions right, you'll win a prize at the end. Yes. Now, Joe, for everyone listening, you have not seen or heard these questions yet.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. So we don't have to worry about the movie quiz show happening here where I got all.
No, we're not stacking the deck. Even though you're a fellow Cub fan, I still want to play it right up the middle and be straight. So, all right, here it goes. If you get all 7 right, Joe, you got it right here. You will win a prize. So, first question is, Joe, if your life had a walk-up song every time you walked into a room, what would it be?
My life had a walk-up song. I'm going to say, boy, I would do one of two things. Either Fly Me to the Moon by Frank Sinatra.
Love it.
Or maybe Chicago by Frank Sinatra.
Fantastic. Okay, you're 1 of 1. Good answer. Correct. If your pet or your closest friend wrote your LinkedIn recommendation, what would they say?
How about what my kids said on Father's Day when I got a 4.5-star review from my daughters? That's great, Dad, but jokes could be funnier.
Joe, that's probably a fair assessment, and that's okay. From the mouths of babes, kids always tell it like it is, I guess.
Right? Yeah, I got with me and the dad jokes. Like I have this. This is from Steve Carlson. He gave me this from Rippey Associates. Yep. Juan Martinez from Profitality gave me this. So yeah, I'm always with the bad joke around. So I don't know. I hope they would say that I'm thoughtful and hardworking. And I don't split too many infinitives.
I love it. And it's funny, I talked to Danielle Mason from Mara today. She goes, you better brush up on your dad jokes. And I didn't think of any. So I'm calling myself out. I don't have any. All right. You're 2 for 2 right now, Joe. If your life came with a disclaimer, what would it say?
How about if my life came with objects in mirror are maybe closer than they appear.
Brilliant.
With life moving pretty fast. I'm 59 years old. I live with a 20-year-old and 2 teenagers. Life comes at you pretty fast, for sure.
I love it. Joe, you're doing great. Number 4, what is your superpower at conferences?
What is my superpower at conferences? I would like to say disappear at the end of the night without anybody noticing. But I've gotten quite good at that one. How about just finding people in a room that I know, like making connections with people in a room? It always just seems that there's always someone to know to start out a conversation, but I always seem to meet someone new by the end of the night as well. So I think that's part of it.
I love it. By the way, there is something about a good Irish goodbye. Most of my people when I'm running, they know you're going to see me and then you're not. I'm okay. It's time to go 99.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. This is one of my favorite questions. Number 5, you're doing great, Joe. You're 4 for 4 so far. If you had to be haunted by one celebrity ghost, who would you choose? And haunted doesn't need to be a bad thing. It could be like your angel too.
Haunted by a celebrity. That's a great one. Boy. See, but he's not dead yet.
He can be alive. We can bend the rules.
All right. Mel Brooks. I love Mel Brooks. I just got done reading his biography, and I watched the 4-hour documentary that Judd Apatow did for Max, and his ability to always maintain a sense of humor, even when it might have been when it's been difficult. His ability to see comedy even in the darkest of things, to take a movie like Blazing Saddles and take on the establishment of racism and that sort of thing, or even work with Hitchcock on poking fun at the the scary movie or the thriller genre and get Hitchcock to totally buy in on it. That's a pretty special person to be able to do that. And the friendships that he was able to form with guys like Carl Reiner and Sid Caesar and all those guys over the years, truly, truly amazing.
Like I would argue too, you don't have Will Ferrell without Mel Brooks. Like you don't have any. I agree. I watched the documentary too, and I love the story of him even in World War II. Like he was across the river from the Germans. Like that's how close he was. Like
yeah. Exactly. It just the way he handled that, you know, being across the river, always showing his love for certain things. You know, and he wasn't right. He's human. He wasn't perfect, right? The first marriage didn't work and whatnot, but he just was. He had some things that didn't go well, but just that ability to see humor and everything, but use his humor to make a point, I think, is pretty impressive.
Yep, yep. Satire is, I think, the greatest art form ever. I'll
Yeah,
argue that all day.
for sure.
Yeah, Joe, you're 5 for 5. I love you're on a roll. All right, number 6. Pancakes or waffles, and defend your answer, please.
Oh, pancakes! Come on, fluffier. We can do more. We can do some different things with them. I know people like the waffles because you can go sweet and savory, but there's
Yep.
just something about a nice fluffy stack of pancakes with blueberries on them, fresh blueberries in there, and some maple syrup. I mean, to me, that's just the bomb.
You defended your answer well, my friend. Number 7, you're 6 for 6, Joe. I really like how you're shaping up here. What is your go-to karaoke song, even if you've never actually sung it? So we're out karaoke time. What is Joe singing?
It's got to be something by Neil Diamond.
Okay.
You know, the Jewish Elvis. We love him, and all that he's done. He's amazing. You know, probably one that so many people have done, like, you know, Sweet Caroline. You know, is a good crowd pleaser. You know, for sure. I would also do, you know, Forever in Blue Jeans. You know, that's a tough one, but we can bring everybody in on that one. I did watch a friend of mine on more than one occasion bring down the house at karaoke doing a riff on Elvis's Suspicious Minds.
Wow.
Like he did it once when we were on a golf trip in the middle of nowhere, Indiana. And then we were on Bourbon Street at a place called the Cat's Meow or something like that. And
Been there?
we threw him up there to do it. And he had him looking in from outside. And I mean, it was wild. Like, he went off. It was fun.
Something beautiful in that, Joe. So I'm gonna tally the scores up. If you could give me a moment.
Sure.
Ernst Young.
Fingers and toes.
That's right. Joe, 7 out of 7. You won. Look for your gift at AHF.
All right. You'll buy me a free drink at the open bar?
I will. Actually, Shane Vernon will, or Scott Rotano if we can get him. Scott, if you could email us your credit card number, that would be helpful.
That would be fine. It'd be about time Varnum paid for something, so that's good.
That's right. Get the alligator arms.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, Joe, we're wrapping things up. I need to thank my company again, real quick. Thank you to Vibro for this opportunity. I mentioned it in pods past. I came to them about 1.5 years ago and said I wanted to do this, and they said, go for it. And they've been super supportive. So thank you, Vibro, for letting me do this on our behalf. I don't take it lightly, and it's a complete honor. And Joe, I also wanted to thank you for your time today. I just loved talking to you. I could go on another hour with you doing this.
Well, same. David, thank you for the opportunity as well. It was you pushed me out of my comfort zone a little bit, because normally I'm the one asking the questions, and today you were. But I love the give and take. It was great.
It was. I feel the same way. I always leave with a quote, and I always write this quote before we even do the interview. And it's usually off of my whiteboard. If you ever come to my office, you'll see I write inspirational quotes. But the quote I read is, I'm no longer subject to the rumors in my mind, meaning for me, anything is possible if you set your mind to it. So I think it's apropos, you talking about your history and being a butcher's son and putting your mind to it and hard work. I think it's the perfect kind of bow on our conversation today, Joe.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I think, and that's the thing I love about being able to work and write about this industry, is that it's still a place where hard work and determination can get rewarded.
Amen, brother. Well, you are the man. I cannot wait to see you soon. Stay cool. Stay indoors. Don't mow the lawn today. Wait till tomorrow.
No. Yep. Thanks for this opportunity, Caden. Appreciate it.
Anytime. We'll see you, bud.